It'll all make sense. I'm a professional.
Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, August the 24th, second to the last August of summer. No, Wednesday of summer. I screwed that up completely. Hey, folks, I'm Shawn King. Thank you guys very much for joining me here on show number 1106. Thank you for listening in live, if you so choose, in the IRC chat room, or whether you're tuned in to just the YouTube video, or whether you listen to us via the archive. Thanks to all of you for listening to the show. On tonight's show, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Mostly going to focus on today, this week is the 5th anniversary of Tim Cook officially taking over as the CEO of Apple. When it happened 5 years ago, I remember us all being very, very sad because we kind of knew in our hearts what it meant. We hoped that it meant Steve Jobs was just going to step back a little bit from the company, but we had seen the writing on the wall. We had all seen how frail he had gotten and how sick he was through keynotes and that sort of thing. So we kind of knew what was going to happen, not shortly, but sooner than we wanted it to. Tim Cook has done an incredible job, not just following Steve Jobs, but of being the CEO of Apple. The stock price is up 105% in the last 5 years. For a mature company like Apple, that's an incredible job. The company's changed a lot, too. Cook is doing things socially more so than Jobs ever did. I think he is as good a CEO as Jobs was, just in a different way. And we'll talk to Jim Dalrymple about that. Arxon says, Shawn, how long had Cook been interim CEO before it became permanent? MacMan says about 6 months. Yeah, and remember, he'd been on and off as interim CEO a couple of the times when Jobs had a cold, as Apple PR lied to us about, and when he went in for his operation and recovery afterwards. But this was the permanent change. Apple announced this was permanent. So we'll talk to Jim about that. We're also going in the starting point of photography segment. We're going to talk about. We got a bunch of questions that have been piling up over the last few weeks and months. I'm going to answer your photography questions. If you have any questions about the show, about photography, about whatever we talk about, please, as always, email me to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. I love getting emails from you guys, either during the week or during the live version of the show. The Olympics are over. They really shiny, really, really shiny. That's that one. Okay. The Olympics are over. There were some bad parts of the Olympics, not as many as a lot of people, myself included, feared. Overall, the Olympics didn't solve any of Brazil's problems. They may have brushed a lot of them under the carpet, under the rug, so to speak. But for the 16 days of the Olympics, I think the Brazilian people, the people of Rio, did a fantastic job. The thousands and thousands of volunteers did an amazing job. The athletes, for the most part, did incredible things. I will never forget Simone Biles and that amazing floor routine she did. I will never forget the Canadian Penny Oleksiak and her reaction when she found out she won the gold medal in her swimming event. She was so cute with her "oh my goodness." The interviews with her afterwards were fantastic. Watched a lot of sports that you don't get to see any of the time. I love watching fencing. Love fencing. That was the only thing I streamed, so I could watch all of it. Handball, table tennis, all of it was fun to watch. For those of you who watch the men's sprint events, the competition between DeGrasse, the Canadian, and Usain Bolt was fun to watch. It was fun to watch them have fun and to tease each other and to push each other. Bolt is retiring. I think he's already said that. And there's a good chance that the Canadian DeGrasse will be the next great sprinter. He will never be as great as Bolt. Nobody ever will be as great as Usain Bolt. Bolt is just an incredible personality and an incredible person. It was fun to watch him for the Olympics. I got to say I'm proud of the Canadian team. You know, we're not a sports powerhouse in general. We had some great moments. We beat the Americans in volleyball, men's volleyball. We won a couple of swimming medals in events that we'd never won before. Won some wrestling medals. Won some. I think we did shitty canoeing in the water sports, which is unusual for us. Usually we do better than that. But it was fun. It was fun to watch. It was exciting. There was times of yelling at the TV. I think the Olympics gets too much about the gold medals, about the winning, about the pursuit of fame. But there's always these wonderful moments in every Olympics. This year was the two runners, the New Zealander and the American, who tripped over each other, over somebody, and the New Zealand girl helping and encouraging the American, who turned out had blown out her knee, helping her run across the finish line. The story of, and I watched this one live, and I say I watched it live only because there was nothing else on at the time, the 50-kilometer race walk, where they just happened to be showing the Canadian, who at the time was in third place, and the Japanese walker going past the Canadian and bumping him. He didn't elbow him or knock him to the ground or anything, but he threw him off, and you could see it, threw the Canadian off his stride. And so the Canadian Olympic Committee protested, and the IOC then gave the bronze medal to the Canadian because the Japanese had won bronze. The Canadian came fourth. And then the Japanese Olympic Committee protested the medal, and the IOC gave it back to the Japanese. And when I saw the bump, I'm screaming on my TV, hey, you can't do that. You can't do it's not a contact sport. And then when I heard that he'd been awarded the bronze, I was like, yay, we got another medal. And then when I heard that the Japanese had protested and gotten it back, I was like, oh, bullshit. Ah! But then I read Dunphy's story, and his comments about it were the absolute element of sports was him saying basically, I did the best I can. I wasn't going to be in third place anyway because he was just a faster walker than me. So he said he was okay with fourth place. That's what he deserved, was fourth place. I said that I thought that was just a wonderful moment of him saying, he could have easily been pissed off about it and angry about being about having the medal stolen from him or taken back from him. But he wasn't. He was magnanimous, he was generous, and he was kind. It was a great aspect of the Olympics. Completely contrasted with that utter moron Ryan Lochte, who still hasn't actually apologized for lying to people. He said he's made a mistake and wasn't candid enough. No, dude, you weren't not candid. You actively lied to people. You told a completely bullshit story. Why? Because you were drunk and thought you might get in trouble? Well, guess what? It's called being an adult. And people trying to cut him slack because he was just a kid. The man's 32 years old. You don't cut 32-year-olds slack. That was the worst part of the Olympics for me. Was the way the media portrayed this, the way they immediately jumped on, because we were primed for it. We were ready for it. We were ready for the story of crime in the Olympics. And there was a lot of crime in the Olympics. The Portuguese Minister of Sport got robbed of his wallet. So we were happy to believe that this would happen. But you know what? If you had to pick one person who was going to be an asshole at the Olympics, you had to pick Lochte. He's the guy. He's the guy that you just would have gone, yeah, he's going to do something stupid. He's going to be an asshole. Sherry's saying Gabby Douglas was told she had to fix her attitude because she didn't have her hand over her heart. And yet, Michael Phelps, who laughed through the American anthem, didn't get as much flack as Gabby Douglas did. There are still a lot of issues we've got when it comes to these kinds of things. The fact that the San Jose Mercury News newspaper wrote that Michael Phelps win gold the same day as an African-American woman did. No, you say her name, you assholes. Or Michael Phelps wins silver in big letters, and then the subhead was the female American swimmer won gold. No, that's not the way you do things. And the NBC coverage is always bad. It's almost not worth complaining about it anymore. It's always going to suck. It's the way NBC has decided they're going to show off the Olympics for the next 4 cycles. So they know people hate the way they do it. They don't seem to care. So we're kind of stuck with their methodology. I'm lucky in that I get to watch the CBC and Sportsnet coverage, which at times gets as bad with the human interest stories as the American coverage does. It's not as bad. But like I said, there's good and bad in the Olympics. This one was expected to be a lot worse than it was, and the people of Brazil should be very proud of themselves for being able to pull off these games, all the things that it had going against them, and them winning the best. One of the best moments had to be Brazil winning the soccer match against the Germans. Remember, the Germans beat them 7-0 in the World Cup semifinals a few years ago. So there was a big sigh of relief from Brazil to win their national sport. That's like if someone beats the Canadians in hockey, we're just devastated. It's the same thing in Brazil. So it's fantastic that the Brazilians won soccer. How about you guys? Was there anything in particular you liked about the Olympics? Any particular sport? I know it was fun with watching diving with Sherry via Telegram last week. She was very excited about the diving, and chatting with other friends around the world, literally, about the sports was fun. Taekwondo was boring. They changed the rules on me. I didn't realize they changed the rules, and so I didn't watch very much Taekwondo. Like I said, fencing is the one that I've fallen in love with over the last few years. Is there any sports that you watched that you were surprised by? I thought it was very funny. The media, apparently after the sprints, Usain Bolt walked onto the field and picked up a javelin and threw the javelin. And the American media made it seem like he was some sort of magical athlete who could do anything. First of all, the javelin is just a stick, okay? Now, throwing it for distance is a big deal, but just throwing it is not that big a deal. We can all throw a stick. And Bolt threw it 54 meters, which seems like a long way. Except the winner of the medal, the gold medal, threw it 96 meters, almost twice as far. And somehow the media, this one writer said that the gold medal was just a little bit further than what Bolt threw it. No, it wasn't. It was like 45% further. Don't make it sound like Bolt did something magical. He threw a stick. I'd be willing to bet most of us could throw a stick 25, 30, 40 meters. The hype around some of this stuff is just mind-boggling at times. In the Starting Point Photography segment, we'll talk about some of the photography there too, and how they get those shots, and you'll understand how they get some of these amazing shots when I show you that. Later in the Starting Point Photography segment, we're also going to talk about your questions. We've got a bunch of photography questions from you guys. But up next, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. This is your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. This is Your Mac Life. I am Shawn King.
Hello.
Joined in our phone now. But
Hello. Hello.
Stop. I'm not finished introducing you. What a dick. We go months without you doing something, and then I think everything's going smooth, and then you sit in your calendar. You say, yeah, that's right. Tonight's the night I fuck with Shawn. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Dick.
Oh, boy.
So today, or this week, marks the 5th anniversary of Tim Cook taking over as CEO of Apple, the permanent CEO of Apple. It's interesting to see how various aspects of the media are portraying this. Some are saying that I saw one letter grade of a C- because Cook's Apple has not outperformed the NASDAQ. We've seen all the usual complaints about not enough products, not enough this, that, the next thing. Over the last 5 years, what are your thoughts on Tim Cook?
Well, first of all, there were a lot of articles on Tim being CEO.
Yep.
A lot of them. And I read 0 of them.
All right.
I did. I read 0 of them because you know why? I don't care.
Yeah.
I just don't care what people who have never run a company in their lives, and if they have, it's never been the size of Apple.
Yeah.
I don't care what they think about what Tim Cook is doing. I just don't care. And what do I think? Well, I think people should care about as much as about what I think as I care about what other writers think. But I think Tim has done remarkably well in running the company. He's certainly taken the company in new directions with its commitment to equal rights. He's continued on what Steve had done with the supplier chain and making sure that, workers were safe and, all that kind of stuff. And I think the stock is doing pretty well considering it just split 7 times.
Yep.
And, the last I looked at it was like $105 or no, $109 or $110 or something.
Into today.
So yeah, I don't know how you can argue with that. I mean, there are a lot of pressures on Apple, on dollars, on components. There's pressures on everything.
Yeah.
Do we all wish that Apple would have released in the last 5 years another blockbuster product? Of course we do. We all like to be wowed, and that's hard to do with all the leaks that are around right now. It's hard to be wowed when new products are pre-announced from rumors.
No, I'm going to call you on that one. It's easy to be surprised. Just don't read the rumors.
Well, there you go. Okay.
The vast majority of people don't know anything about what's going to happen in September, and I ignore all the rumors. I read the headlines, but I don't read any of the stories. It's easy to be surprised. Just don't.
I don't agree with you there because for the regular person, and I've had this happen, The regular person who's not an Apple person, not a tech person, just a regular person. I've had people come up to me and say, "Oh, I hear the new iPhone is going to have this."
Yep.
And it's not, hey, I saw a rumor. It's fact. The new iPhone is going to have this, like a better camera or whatever. Well, where did you see that? I don't know, somewhere on the internet. So it's not, to them, this isn't a rumor. They don't see it as, well, it may or may not happen. It's fact to them. And that's dangerous. Because, I could write a story tonight and say, according to my sources, the new iPhone is going to have a laser so that you can kill people when you're going down the street. And, if that's going to be, and then when the new iPhone comes out, and in fact it does not have a laser where you can kill people, then people are going to say, well, what the fuck, Apple? Where's the laser?
But to be fair,
I wanted a laser.
To be fair, the laser would cost more.
Well, it may be in a pro version.
That would be the pro version, exactly. I wrote today on Twitter, CNN Money said, I quote, 5 years after Tim Cook became CEO, Apple hasn't created a new product category rivaling the iPhone. And I wrote, neither has anyone else.
Well, not only that, but it would be very difficult for any company to make a product category rivaling the iPhone.
No shit.
What is it? And this is why I don't read these things, because I get truly upset when people say stupid things like this. Yep. There are certain product categories in a company's life, their entire life, that they can do that really rocks the world. Well, most companies have one of those. Apple has had a number of them. The iPod did that. The iPhone did that. The Mac did that. You look at some different software categories that arguably have been doing that. It's just incredible how much Apple has done it. And the thing that I keep coming back to in my own mind about this is Apple finished doing it? Yes. I don't believe they are. So is it time to move away from Apple? Well, not for me. It may be for other people because they're tired that Apple hasn't released a blockbuster product. But I don't think Apple is done. So I'm going to continue on, and I'm not going to continue on because I think that the next product, I want to be all Apple or anything like that. Everything that I have from Apple works well.
Yeah.
So why would I leave? Why would I go to Android? And why would I go to a Samsung phone or, whatever else crap is out there? I don't want to do that. I like to use, when I wake up in the morning and I turn on my computer, my iPad, my iPhone, my watch, they all work, and they all work together. And that's what I want.
Is it unfair of us to put these incredibly high expectations on Apple? The fact that we should have a new category like the iPhone once every 6 months, and we don't expect the same of Sony and Samsung and Microsoft and Dell and those kinds of things? Okay,
so I'm writing an article right now about our expectations or unreasonable or reasonable expectations of Apple. And it delves into this very thing. And to give you a short, long answer, part of what we hold Apple up to, I believe, is very fair because it's what Apple holds itself up to.
Yes.
So I think in products like iOS, products like Apple Music, it is fair to hold Apple to a higher standard than what we would hold Microsoft to because we don't really expect a whole lot from Microsoft.
That's true.
However, when it comes to blockbuster products, I think it's unfair to hold Apple to a higher standard than what we would hold, Apple releasing an update to something. I was going to say another company, but that's not really fair because we don't hold any other company to the standard that we hold Apple to in anything. But take, for instance, the MacBook. And let me ask you what you think about this. the MacBook is an interesting thing because people are screaming right now that Apple has not updated the MacBook.
Yep.
But not all of that is Apple's fault. There are components that are not ready
Yes.
for the MacBook. So I actually asked one guy that emailed me complaining about the MacBooks and asking why I hadn't, belittled Apple and just come right out and punch them in the face about the MacBooks.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, you have a choice. Hypothetically, here's your choice. You could have a brand new MacBook with, all these new components and everything released sometime later this year, or Apple in June at WDC could have released a MacBook that was basically the same components, maybe a little upgrade, a couple hundred megahertz on the chip, and nothing major, but a new computer. What would you rather? And he said, well, I'd rather the better one,
yep,
not just an upgraded one. And I said, then how can you scream at Apple when, in fact, they're trying to deliver the best product? And he said, well, you don't know that that's the case. And he said, take a look around at the chips and everything. You can't scream at Apple for something that isn't their fault. They're not in control of everything. So that's where I think our expectations are blown way out of proportion of where they should be. Now, when Apple releases a piece of software and it's not up to Apple standards and the standards that they have set, I think that our obligation to tell them that is there and it's real. And I think that by telling them that they missed our expectations, they will get better. I feel that about Apple Music. And for me, mostly about Apple Music. I will continue to tell them that I don't think that they've met their own standards.
Sure.
But
and I think I think the other issue too is that Apple's caught between a rock and a hard place. They're damned if they do and damned if they don't. If they just brought out minor revs and minor upgrades, people would bitch about that. Oh, it's only 10% faster than the last version. But if they also wait for 18 months for Intel to get their chips up to Apple's specs, up to what Apple needs and wants, they get slammed for that kind of stuff too.
Right.
Is part of the problem, though, the media itself, or the way the media portrays these things? If the media would come out and say, hey, look, it's not all Apple's fault. If, the media said what you just said, but instead the media pushes the panic button and says, oh, Apple's not innovating anymore, and people at CNET and The Verge and those kinds of sites are all over Apple without explaining to the audience why, at least partly, why these things are happening. I think part of the issue is the way the media portrays Apple.
Well, part of the reason is I don't think that the media understands the tech. And you have to understand too that I believe a lot of the media are just going for page views. That's big sites and small sites now,
Agree.
So if that's what they're going for, then having an article that explains everything isn't exactly the type of article that's going to bring out page views. Yep. Now, an article saying, in the next 6 months, Apple's completely fucked. Yep. Okay, that'll get lots of page views. Right. People love that. They'll go all over it.
Yep. Yeah, this is the age-old story. You and I have been talking about this for decades now. It was announced literally. Oh, yeah, absolutely, literally. It was announced that the Apple Music Festival will be in London again this year at the Roundhouse. Again, free tickets. Again, some amazing bands. And again, will you be there, Jim?
No.
No. How come?
No, we don't know who the bands are going to be.
Oh, they haven't announced the bands yet? I thought they had. I thought I saw. Okay, maybe it's just a rumor of what I saw.
No, we don't know who the bands are going to be, but I would say most likely they're going to be pop and rap bands because that's what Apple Music focuses on.
Now, you were knocking Apple Music for not having enough other kinds of music. There are no metal, there are no even hard rock bands historically at this event. Isn't Apple catering to its market, or do you think it should broaden itself?
Well, and here's another article that I'm working on. So I don't care if it's hard rock and if it's the bands that I specifically like. I care about blues and, I care about anything but what they're doing right now, to be honest. I mean, Apple is not a music station. It's a pop and rap station service. That's what it is. So,
Now, do you have a problem with the fact that Apple says right there on the page, if you want to listen, you have to join Apple Music?
Why? Why would I have a problem with that?
No, these events have been free for folks to watch on their Apple TV, on the website. You didn't have to be associated. You didn't have to give Apple any money. You didn't have to do anything to watch them. Now Apple's kind of directing, almost forcing you to join their music service in order to participate in these events.
Apple's all about numbers now.
True, but if that were no, so I take it back. Not true, because if that were true, then they wouldn't narrow the pool by forcing people to join Apple Music.
No, but they'll get a lot of new subscriptions because of it.
True.
And that's what they're all about. They're all about those subscription numbers.
So you're saying it's not a bad thing?
Oh, I don't care for it myself.
Yeah.
I mean, I always considered Apple to be about music, and they're not. I don't think they really are anymore. I think they're about numbers.
I think Apple is more about marketing music as opposed to music itself.
Yeah,
and that's definitely not a good thing.
I always considered Apple to be about music.
Yep.
Until recently.
Arkstein says, Shawn, ask Jim if the folks that came to Apple from Beats are visible and what kind of job they're doing at Apple now. Do you have any interaction with those folks?
I've talked to Jimmy a couple of times. I think personally, I just think that the focus is all wrong at Apple Music.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I mean, I know a lot of people are tired of hearing me talk about Apple Music, but I just think it's the wrong focus. I think that these now, pop and rap exclusives are what gets Apple numbers, and that's where the focus is. And I think that's the wrong way to go.
Yeah.
But they need to show growth in numbers. And every time they come out and say, well, now we have 15 million and now we have 16 million, then, the numbers look good. The numbers look like they're doing the right thing. But if the service still sucks, I know people that go for the exclusives and then quit and go back to Spotify because it's a better service.
Kimbo in IRC chat room says, it's business. Marketing music is a good thing.
Yeah, I guess. I get that. I understand it. I understand that, they'll pull in many more people with Taylor Swift than what they will with a blues band or a hard rock band.
Yeah.
But see, to me, when Apple was about music, it would do all of them.
Exactly.
Because it was the right thing to do, and they have an audience. Now Apple is about numbers, and they don't really care about anything else other than the top albums, and that's rap and pop.
Whatever brings in those numbers. And the shame of it is that it feels like Apple's forgotten or doesn't realize their power, because they could broaden everyone's interest and knowledge of music by expanding to these other areas that are very popular, maybe not as popular as Taylor Smith, but at least folks could learn about other styles of music, other kinds of music, even things like hard rock and metal, the things that you like, or the stuff that I like, the old R&B and blues stuff. It feels like they're too focused on the top of the charts type stuff.
Yeah. To me, I just want to see a balanced approach to music.
Yeah.
I mean, either that or change the name from Apple Music to Apple Pop and Rock or Pop and Rap.
That's right. Yeah.
Change it to one of those and be done with it.
Speaking of changes, our friend John Gruber over at Daring Fireball and his Q Branch company have announced the shuttering of their note app Vesper. What are your thoughts on that shuttering?
I think it's too bad.
It was predictable, though, wasn't it?
Well, Vesper was a good app.
No, Vesper was a good-looking app. It didn't do anything that Evernote didn't do better.
Well,
it didn't sync. It didn't have multiple devices. How many of your notes are only on one device? How many people want their notes, their note-taking ability, to be on just one device? We've been trained through Dropbox and through Evernote and through Apple's own notes that when I write a note on my iPhone, it shows up on my iPad and my iMac and on the internet. And I think Vesper was a one-trick pony and didn't do the trick well enough.
Well, I don't know. Well, I think John's notes on it were very interesting to read.
Agreed.
But I do think it's unfortunate that it happened. I mean, I love to see app developers be successful, and clearly this one wasn't. I've been there. I know.
Yep. Yeah, well, and I completely agree with you. I mean, I'm not wishing ill on Q Branch or Brent Simons or any of those guys. I think they went about it the wrong way, knowing from the beginning that they went about it the wrong way. I don't know that they. I think they.
I don't think they knew that from the beginning.
They seem to say from reading both Brent's and John's. Postmortems on it, they recognize what a better way would have been. They just chose not to take it.
Well, I think that they knew after the first app was already built that maybe there was a better way. And certainly looking back, there's a better way that we could do almost everything.
True.
So that's why I enjoyed Gruber's postmortem on it because, there was a better way, but because of technology and a lot of different things, they couldn't see that better way at the time.
Yeah.
But looking back, maybe if they had waited a couple of years, then, that better way would have shown itself to them at that point. But,
yeah, they certainly got caught right there at the cusp of iOS 7 and syncing and all those other kinds of things. It is a shame because it was a beautiful looking app. Like I said, I didn't find very much functionality in it because I want my notes to sync across multiple devices and multiple platforms.
Yeah.
And things like Evernote, even though Evernote's butt ugly, did that much better than Vesper's ever did. It was kind of interesting to see John tweet today that Vesper's has been downloaded more times since Sunday than it had in its entire 3 years previous to this. That's not a good thing.
No.
But I from what I'm reading about Brent and John, they are working on other things. There's no telling when they'll come out. They're smart guys. Hopefully they will do other things because with John's design sense and Brent's coding ability, I think they can do some really good apps. It's a shame that this one has to go by the wayside.
I mean, Brent is an incredible software engineer.
Yep, he is.
I have a ton of respect for him. Dave did the design, and with John, and John basically had a hand in everything and how it worked and how it looked, and a bunch of smart guys. But that just shows the App Store. I mean, the App Store is meant for games and the odd productivity app, but nothing else.
Is there any way Apple can fix that now, or is it too late? Are we sort of just stuck with this model now? Do you think that there's any hope for the App Store?
I don't know. I mean, I don't really go to the App Store anymore because there's nothing really there.
Yep.
Nothing that I'm really interested in anyway. I mean, I have the functionality of my phone. Every once in a while, a new app will come out, but most of what Apple promotes are games.
Yep.
And I'm not a gamer, so there's when I go to music, to Apple Music, I look at new albums that came out. There's always a reason for me to check,
Yep.
What's coming out. And I have found new albums that I hadn't heard about. Metallica's new song. My son actually sent me, but I saw that I went right on Apple Music and got it, and got the album, the pre-release. But so there's always a reason for me to go there. That reason doesn't exist for me on the App Store.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't know how they make that happen, but right now it's not happening.
It's certainly, I agree with you in the sense that I'm the same way. The App Store is no interest to me whatsoever anymore. If I see or hear about a new app, it's from someone's website or a review or someone mentions it on Twitter or Facebook, and I download it from there. But I never open up the App Store just to surf through the App Store to see what I find of interest.
No. And that's too bad for developers.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Because, developers are expecting that they're going to post an app and it's going to get downloaded a million times and it's going to be this great thing, and instead it just gets lost in the shuffle.
Speaking of lost in the shuffle, Pinterest has acquired Instapaper. Now, I was an original Instapaper user when Marco first brought it out.
Me too.
Fairly quickly switched over to Pocket because at the time Pocket had more functionality, and I never went back to Instapaper because Pocket does what I wanted to. When you first heard the story, did it strike you as kind of odd that Pinterest, which is a company we think more about pictures and recipes and artsy craftsy type things, would buy Instapaper?
Well, it did strike me as a little bit odd, but you never know what's going to happen with these companies these days. People are going to buy, and I think I'm being fair when I say that Instapaper has kind of lost its luster.
Yeah.
With people, including me. I was a huge Instapaper user, and then it just kind of died off for me. I used it all the time. And then I still pay for it, but I'm not a user. Yeah. So, they're still getting my money, but I'm just not doing it. And, a couple of people asked me on Twitter, well, if you're not using Instapaper, what are you using? And that actually made me think, good question. What am I using?
That's what I was going to ask.
The answer is nothing, really. Maybe reading list, but nothing. I don't know if my habits have changed or what's happening, but
I know I don't use paper as much as I used to. I used to be able to keep up, and I would have 0 unread articles in paper. And I've noticed now, because of the story, I went and looked. I've got almost 1,000 unread articles in Pocket now, which is kind of disturbing.
That is disturbing,
like,
especially for you.
Yeah, oh, exactly. For me, like, what am I forgetting? What am I missing? Well, it turns out I went back and looked, and interestingly enough, about 25% of those articles are articles about photography. Little articles, little tips and tricks, little bits of information that I'm using Pocket as a repository for those. I used to keep the URLs on my desktop or on a folder on my desktop. Now I'm putting them in Pocket. But I think part of it is I just don't have the time to read all the articles I thought I was going to.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what the solution is for the App Store. I wish I did. Then I'd be a billionaire too. But
another interesting article that popped up over the last 7 days, the Samsung Galaxy Note 7 got rave reviews in the first 35 seconds that the embargoes were over. And then we found out 3 or 4 or 5 days later that it wasn't as good as what folks like The Verge, who gave it a 9 out of 10, said about it. It seems like some of these reviews were, to be generous, perhaps done a little too quickly. And then we saw this video of a speed test between last year's iPhone 6S and the Samsung's just released Galaxy Note 7. Did you watch the speed test?
I did not.
It's basically a test of how fast these phones can open apps. The tester wasn't actually doing very much in the apps themselves, just opening them. But a lot of the media, because the media has the brain power of a goldfish, latch onto these things and say, it proves the iPhone 6S is faster than the brand new Galaxy Note 7. Do you put any stock into any of these kinds of reviews, these hot take reviews, or these kinds of speed tests?
Well, we've talked about reviews before, and I mean, for me, maybe I'm a bit different than other people, but for me, a review is more about how I use it and how it works in my life than how fast it is. Now, I think it is impressive if a last generation phone is still faster than this generation. It's kind of funny. Yeah. But, you have to see how anything works for you. I mean, I was certainly getting frustrated with the Apple Watch because it would take so long to open apps. So that is important. It is important to see how fast something will open, and so you don't get frustrated. I was frustrated with the watch. The new OS is much better. I'm using the beta OS,
yeah,
and it's much faster. So that's a good thing. It's a damn good thing. I love it. I want it to be faster.
I think for me, none of this stuff matters, if only because I'm never going to buy a Android-based phone, so I don't really care whether or not this phone is faster than that phone or this OS is faster than that OS.
Yeah, but I think that people do need validation that they made the right decision.
Oh, absolutely. That's the nature of human beings. Yeah.
And especially when you're spending that much money. I mean, I know that for me, I know that I've made the right decision, so I'm not too worried about it. I don't think that there's really anything anybody has to worry about, but some people need that validation. Aha, mine is faster.
Yeah. Wayne says, it's an interesting statement. There's nothing Apple, Google could possibly do that would make you buy Android. Nothing that I can see. I've got so much money tied up in the Apple ecosystem, in Apple phones, in the process that I'm very familiar with, that I don't want to go to an Android phone with all the associated downside of it, the lack of speed, perceived or otherwise, the huge amount of potential dangerous apps that are out there. I don't worry about viruses or bad stuff on my iPhone, and I download a lot of apps to test them out. I don't want to have to go through that. It's got no place for me in my computing life. I'm not saying it's bad for anybody else. If for cost or for functionality or jailbreak, whatever it is for you, that's fine. I'm saying for me, I don't see anything on the Android side of the fence that makes me at all interested in their
products. I don't think that there's anything that Android could do to make me switch. I really don't. I don't know.
Nothing significant enough, anyway.
No. For me, a lot of it, and again, it goes back to what these devices will do in my lifestyle.
Yeah.
For me, a lot of it is the way that they all work together.
Yeah.
And, that's very important to me. You mentioned it earlier. You take a note on your Mac, well, it shows up on your iPhone and your iPad, and vice versa. So that is an important thing. That's what I want to happen. I expect that to happen now. And, when iCloud is working, then it does happen.
Finally, the news this week, we all saw it coming. We all knew it was coming. Gawker.com is finally dead. Are you happy or sad by that?
I don't care. And see, I know that I should care.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I know that I should. I really do. And I know that there are reasons that I should. But
because
it's interesting if any billionaire out there could put a bunch of journalists out of work.
Yep.
But
it could have very easily been you. It could have been Samsung coming after you. It could have been BlackBerry coming after you because you've said some hateful things about those two companies.
Well, that's because they're stupid.
But what I'm saying is this precedent. Yeah, and I'll be the first one to admit that 95% of what Gawker posted was asinine, childish, stupid. Even this Hulk Hogan story wasn't a story. It was purely an interest. This was not in the public good to see Hulk Hogan getting naked. Dear God, I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
What? And the story that got Theo all pissed off to begin with, outing him as gay, was also offensive. But this has got to give a chilling effect on a lot of the media. People are now going to be thinking to themselves, can I post this story? Because what if it pisses off a rich guy?
Well, look, I don't think that Gawker was right in outing Peter. And if I were Peter and I had a couple of $1 billion, I would wait too.
Yep.
And I would go after them just for fun.
Yep.
So, is it
That's
a big
scary.
deal? And, then don't post stupid shit.
But what if Samsung comes after you? What if BlackBerry comes after you?
For saying pay your debts?
For at the very least libel, slander.
Whatever.
Dude, you got to think about that kind of stuff because even if you're in the right, the lawsuit itself will bankrupt you.
Yeah.
You're done.
Well, I'm already bankrupt.
Your shopping cart under the bridge, they're taking that away from you.
They can't take my I'll take the wheels off the shopping cart. You want the shopping cart? Fine, but I get the wheels.
See, that's the scary part for me, is the fact that it's not just that you can be in the right and justice will prevail. It's the process of the lawsuit that would bankrupt most people. That would bankrupt the vast majority of journalists out there. Yep. And they can't afford that, so therefore they won't print the stories that are important. And nothing that Gawker printed in regard to this stuff was the slightest bit important.
I have to believe that if a New York Times journalist posted something or wrote something, and it was true,
yes,
and it was worthwhile, and I understand the argument there, but hear me out. If it was worthwhile, that the courts would rule in favor of the journalist.
Oh, and they have. They absolutely have.
I have to believe that that's the case.
But it's cost the New York Times millions and millions of dollars to fight these cases.
Okay.
They go to court on a regular basis. They go to court with the U.S. government on a regular basis. And the U.S. government can print their own money. So the New York Times has to be extraordinarily careful to be in the right when they say these things. Now, on the Internet, as people aren't always in the right.
When I call Samsung thieving bastards, I'm in the right. Because they are.
They are. I'm not going to disagree with you. We're both going to get sued. Folks, we're talking to Jim Dalrymple in the Loop at loopinsight.com. He's here each and every week. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Shawn.
See you, buddy. Bye.
Bye.
That's the issue I have, is the fact that even if you're in the right, somebody with more money can drive you into bankruptcy. That's the scary part. That's the part I think is going to have what's called a chilling effect on journalism. That even if you're right, maybe you won't print this story because you'll piss off the wrong person. And maybe it is an important story. Maybe it is in the public good. The public has a right to know this stuff. And everyone will be behind you. But you'll get sued into bankruptcy. That's not a good thing. Dave D says you can sue back. Well, not if they've already sued you into bankruptcy. You got no money. That's the key. You got no money. Here's the story I was telling you guys about. Hang on. I can do this right. Put the logo up. In our starting point photography segment, here's the story I was telling you guys about before with regards to how they get these photos, the crowd of photographers at the Rio Olympics. The funny thing about this is that we see beautiful imagery from the Olympics. What we forget is that it's not just from one person. It's not just from one camera, one photographer. If you take a look at some of these images, you'll see hundreds and hundreds of photographers. There are probably, 100 photographers in this shot? Oops, let me go the other way. That's a lot of photographers. That's a lot of guys shooting millimeters away. So, of course, one of these guys is going to get a good shot. One of these guys is going to get the shot that makes the front page of the New York Times or Sports Illustrated or whatever. The vast majority of these guys are freelancers or have been sent there by a particular company, and there'll be like 10 of them. Joe McNally was tweeting all week about his responsibilities of photography at the Olympics and how he was told, all right, here's the shot you get. You will stand here and get this shot, and there's 10 other guys down there who'll get other shots along that way. But one of the other things about the beautiful photography, the beautiful images we're getting from the Olympics or other sporting events is not just the fact there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photographers. It's the way they shoot. I love this shot here. See how some guys are standing and some guys are sitting? They're not sitting to get out of the way of the guys behind them. They don't give a rat's ass about the guys behind them. They would want to block those guys because if they block a fellow photographer, it means he doesn't get the shot and you do. They're sitting, they're kneeling, they're leaning to get a different angle on the shot. And that's one of the things I teach in my classes is to help folks look at things in a different way. All of these guys standing are going to get shots at 5'10", at 6 feet high. These guys sitting are going to get a different angle of the shot. Now look at these guys here in the track and field. Again, this is one of the pits, and these guys are shooting at ground level. That's the track here on the left-hand side. They're shooting right at ground level. These guys here, I love this shot. There's 5 guys on their bellies getting this shot. So when you go out shooting, think about different angles to get the shot. Don't just shoot standing up at your 5'8", 6'3" height. Get higher if you can. Get lower if you can. Do something to change the angle of the shot to make that seemingly ordinary, everyday, eye-to-eye shot a little different, a little more interesting, a little more inventive, clever. I always tell the story, I love the story of Steve Jobs' keynote. And what a lot of folks didn't realize is that Jobs would end the keynote, then you'd see him walk off stage. And then the audience would leave and go to the show floor. But if you hung around afterwards, Jobs would go backstage, do interviews with CNBC and those guys. Then he would, 20 minutes, a half hour later, he would come back out onto the stage and come down to the floor level. And all the Apple VIPs had hung around to talk to Jobs. So I knew this. So this one expo I didn't leave with the rest of the crowd. I waited around, and there was this crush of people around Jobs. I couldn't get anywhere near him. So I started walking over the chairs, the aisles of the chairs. And I got right up next, I got one aisle of chairs away from Steve Jobs. So now I'm 6'3", so the chair's, 2 feet off the ground, 2.5 feet off the ground? So now I'm at 8 feet, 8.5 feet maybe. And I'm shooting down on Steve Jobs. And I got this great photo of Jobs, Vice President Al Gore, and Tim Cook with this great big smile on their face. Jobs has got a big, full-throated laugh. Cook or Gore have said something very funny. And Jobs has thrown his head back with his laugh. And I got this great shot of all 3 of them laughing at this crush of people around them. The shot would have been completely different if I had been at eye level. But because I was shooting down on top of them, I got this really neat angle of the shot. So look for different ways to get the shot, to get higher or get lower. As Kimbo says in the IRC chat room, shoot from the hip. If you're a good enough photographer, if you have your camera set up properly, if you have a wide enough angle lens, you can shoot with the camera down really, really low. Practice this stuff. Look for different angles. As I said earlier, we've got some questions from you guys. Let's get through some of these. Some of these questions. Tim in New York City says, which DSLR camera is suitable for amateur photographers who are interested in landscape, street, and portrait photography? That's an impossible question, Tim. Because landscape, street, and portrait are three completely different styles of photography that require three different kinds of skills. Now, you can take those shots with any kind of camera. The important thing is the lens you use. So, like I tell everyone, if you're an amateur, buy the best camera body you can, whether that be a Rebel, Canon Rebel, whether it be a Nikon D5300 or 3400, whatever it might be, whether it's a mirrorless camera, get a good body of the camera and then invest in the lenses. So, for example, in your question about landscape shot, landscape is generally using a wide-angle lens. Portrait shots are generally using an 85 millimeter lens. So landscape, usually you're going from 11 millimeters to 24 millimeters. Portraits, you're using 75 to 105 millimeters. And street photography, depending on what kind of street photography you do, anything from a 50 millimeter to an 11 to 40 millimeter. So I've already mentioned 5 different kinds of lenses. So it's the lenses that are important, not as much the body of the camera. Buy the body you can afford and then start looking at lenses for the individual kind of photography that you want to do. But MacMan makes a good point. MacMan says on a cropped body, which is the Rebel XTSI 6, I don't know what it is, but any beginner level camera is going to be what's called a crop sensor camera. When you put a 50 millimeter lens or any lens on it, it actually acts like a bigger lens because of the crop factor. Usually crop factor is, say, 1.5. You multiply 1.5 by the millimeter of the lens, and that gives you the crop. Don't worry about it. It makes your lens look bigger than it actually is. So one body, multiple lenses. Louise in Miami. Do I gain anything by setting my camera to black and white? That's a great question, Louise. It's also tough to answer. You would gain a way of looking at the world in a different way. When you shoot in black and white, when you're focused on shooting in black and white, you stop looking at colors and you start looking at shadows and grays and lines and textures and backgrounds. When you think about shooting in black and white, you're less focused on that bright blue and more focused on that line between the dark shadow and the light shadow and the gray and people's faces. Now, if you mean actually setting your camera to black and white, absolutely. If you want to shoot in black and white, many cameras, when you go to your scene modes on the top, will actually let you shoot in black and white. So when you look through the viewfinder, you don't see color here. You see black and white. And as a beginner, that's really good. Because what happens for a lot of beginners is they'll think in black and white, but they'll shoot in color and then bring their shots into their computer, into Photos or Lightroom or some other app, and then switch it to black and white. And that may not get you the results you want because you weren't seeing in black and white. Now, as you get more experience, you can shoot in color but see in black and white. What that means is when I go out to shoot in black and white, I don't look at my viewfinder screen because I'm already seeing the scene in black and white. I don't need to use the camera to see. So I can shoot in color and know that in the computer how to change it to black and white. So if you're thinking about shooting in black and white, definitely change your camera settings to black and white because then it will take away the distracting color aspect of things. It'll take away the blues and reds and yellows, and you'll just see in black and white. Mosquito says, will the black and white settings get a better resolution image than RGB would? Well, what happens is the camera doesn't actually shoot in black and white. It only shows you black and white. It still shoots in full color. So when you bring it into your software, it still has the full resolution of your shot. If you're shooting in RAW. If you're shooting in RAW. Monty says, Shawn, when you and Ian were doing the photography podcast, the black and white on camera versus in post came up. If you remember, I shot and sent you guys the same American flag image shot in black and white on camera, and then in color, changed the black and white in post. There was virtually no difference. Oh, absolutely. But that's because you know how to shoot. You think in black and white. You understand what I'm saying? Hopefully I'm making this clear. If it's not, please let me know. When you think in black and white and see in black and white without looking into the camera, yeah, you can shoot in color without a problem. A great example is whenever I shoot street photography, I always shoot with black and white in mind, because I think personally street photography, and from what I understand, street photography many times looks more interesting in black and white than it does in color. So I look at the scene as if it were black and white. I imagine shades. I imagine shadows. I imagine lines. I imagine this stuff in my head before I ever push the shutter button. Monty says black and white is underappreciated these days. It can be. And not every shot needs to be in black and white. Not every shot looks good in black and white. If you a perfect example of it is, so I can't really find this real fast for you guys. Perfect example is this amazing place that we're going to go to in Portugal called the Pena Palace, or Pena Palace. I don't speak Portuguese, so, but it looks very Disney-esque. I can't imagine shooting this in black and white. It would look okay in black and white, but the beauty of this image isn't the shadows or the grays. It's the wonderful color. It's the beauty of those yellows and those reds. So not every shot looks good in black and white. So think about that. Kimbo says black and white brings up more features. That depends. Depends on what you're shooting. It can, but sometimes it doesn't. Suzanne in Dallas. DSLR cameras. Which is better for a beginner, Nikon or Canon? Which model? Neither. We've talked about this before. It doesn't matter, Suzanne. Nikon, Canon, Olympus, Fuji, Sony, they all make good beginner cameras. They all make good first DSLR or mirrorless cameras. Just pick one. One thing you can do is if you have friends who are photographers, what kind of cameras do they use? And I say that because then you can borrow their lenses. If you think you might want to rent lenses at some point, which I always encourage folks to do, most lens rental places only rent Canon and Nikons. Canon and Nikon are the two most popular. When it comes to beginners, they're not the two bestest. There are good mirrorless cameras out there. There are good Canons, good Nikons, good Fujis, good Sonys. Don't worry about the brand of the camera so much. If you have access to other lenses, if you've got a friend with a bunch of Nikon lenses, buy a Nikon. If you've got a friend with a bunch of Canon lenses, buy a Canon. But as a beginner, the brand of camera doesn't make any difference. Learn how to use the camera, learn how to use the functions of the camera, learn how to shoot, and then worry about what kind of camera you're going to buy. Monty says, as a beginner, buy the one that fits in your hand the best. Buy the same brands that are friends so you can try out lenses they have. Exactly. MacMan says, Canon has the benefit of more lenses, but Nikon versus Canon is like Ford versus Chevy. You're going to get a good car with either brand, same with cameras. The one that fits your hand is a perfect thing to say, Monty. Because my Nikon's been in the shop, it's going to cost me $600 to get my Nikon fixed. I'm eating ramen for a month. $600. Please subscribe to Your Mac Life. Help me pay for my damn camera. because I haven't had my Nikon. I've been shooting on the photo shoots that I go on with this Olympus. And this Olympus is a great camera. It's mirrorless. It is got some fantastic lenses on it. It has got this really cool flip screen. I took this on the mural shoot that I went on this past weekend. I'll take it to a night shoot this Saturday night. I would not buy this camera. Some of you folks may already be able to see why I wouldn't buy this camera. Look at my hand. Look how small this is for my hand. When I'm holding my Nikon, my entire hand fits in there. But in this Olympus, my hand gets kind of cramped after a while. This is not comfortable in my hand. It's a great camera, but for my hand, for my personal choice, this is not a comfortable camera for me. It's a great camera. It's got great specs. It's, with the right lens on it, going to be a fantastic travel camera. I'm bringing this camera with me to Portugal when I go because it's going to be a great travel camera. But as in my everyday shooting camera, not crazy about it because it's too small for my hands. So definitely try the camera out, as Monty says. Monty says, it looks like a toy in your hand. And yeah, it's not like I've got extra meaty man hands. It's just that because it's a mirrorless camera, it's just physically smaller. And for me, I prefer the bigger size, the bigger hand grip of my Nikon D600. And that's just a personal preference. The reverse is true, too. You may go into a store and not like a great big DSLR. Take a look. Your hands may not feel comfortable. Take a look at the mirrorless cameras because they're physically going to be smaller. Monty says, my Nikon D300 has the battery grip on it. My camera feels more comfortable in my hand with a battery grip on it than just the body. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I've got a battery grip for my Nikon, too, and I like the battery grip on it. Jeff in Palo Alto. Do you think digital cameras and DSLRs have lost their relevance as smartphones are fulfilling the purpose? Will phone cameras ever make standalone cameras obsolete? Jeff, folks are still using film cameras. Folks are still using old Hasselblad cameras. They're obsolete, but folks are still using them. As long as we have a need for high-quality images, smartphones will not make DSLRs obsolete. Now, smartphones might make the small point-and-shoots obsolete, but when it comes to DSLRs, no, because the DSLR, I've done this demonstration for you guys on many occasions. Remember, I always say photography is about gathering light. So the front of your lens gathers light. Well, look at the iPhone. Look at the part that gathers light on the iPhone. Look at the difference in size. Right there is the primary reason why a DSLR camera takes better shots than a smartphone. It gathers more light. It's why the iPhone sucks in low light conditions, because its light gathering capabilities is so tiny. It's that little itty-bitty hole for light to get through. Think about the sensor on the size of this. The sensor on the size of this is smaller than the home button. The sensor on the size of this is about the size of my thumbnail. It's a good size chunk of silicon. So those two things, plus the added features of an SLR, the added control of shutter speed, of ISO, of aperture, exposure compensation, all these things that you can control on a DSLR make the DSLR better for some people. There are some folks out there who only ever shoot with their iPhone, and that's fine. They don't need or don't want or have no interest or desire to shoot with one of these because they're happy with the photos that they get with their iPhone. And you can take some very good photos with the iPhone. There's no doubt about that. You can just take better photos in more situations, more creatively than you can with a DSLR than you can with an iPhone. So if that aspect is important to you, it's interesting. I read a story on Monday that while the market for compact point-and-shoot cameras has fallen off a cliff, the market for DSLRs is actually up 15% from last year. And the reason behind that is people are using their smartphone to take pictures, but then wanting to take better pictures, and they move up to an SLR. They're not moving up to a small point-and-shoot that costs $300 because they've got a point-and-shoot that costs $300. It's their phone. They're moving up to a fuller featured DSLR phone. So I think from that point of view alone, the smartphone is not going to kill off the DSLRs, even though it pretty much has killed off the small compact ones. Now, that being said, Stephen in Toronto says, what's the best camera to get for my 9-year-old? Now, when it comes to this market, that's where compact cameras come in. You guys know over the years I've raved about the Olympus TG line, or their Tough line. I think the latest one is the TG 850. If I had kids, or if I wanted to get a little person a present, a compact camera, especially ones like the Olympus TG line, is a great idea for kids. The Olympus is good on the drop test from, I think, 5 feet, and I've dropped it from 5 feet. It's good underwater to 30 feet. It's good to minus 10 degrees, I think, Celsius. So what's that, about 10 degrees Fahrenheit? So it's good in the cold. It's good in the rain. It's waterproof, water resistant to be exact. You take it to the beach. It doesn't get sand in it. You take it skiing. You can drop it in the snow. The TG line has a really fun little flip screen on it for selfies. So this one has the flip screen that goes in 2 directions. And you'll see some cameras will have a flip screen that goes out here. The Olympus line has the flip screen that flips up, which is really kind of cool because then you turn it around and you can take selfies using the flip screen that's now flipped backwards. It's really kind of a neat little camera. So for kids, or for environments you don't want to take your phone to, the compact cameras are really good. And they're fairly inexpensive. They're not cheap, but they're fairly inexpensive. $300, $400 for the Olympus line. You can find others that do the same thing. So if you're looking for kids, 9-year-old who is interested in photography, and it's got all the scene modes in it, plus it's got some of the manual modes, the shutter priority and aperture priority that a kid wouldn't necessarily want, but they can grow into those kinds of features. So that's not a bad one. Speaking of those modes, Ben in Seattle says, in a DSLR camera, what are the P, AV, TV, and M modes? Ben, first thing, read your manual, because your manual will explain this stuff to you. It'll tell you what this is. Your manual, as poorly written as it is, and I guarantee you it is, at least tells you the functionality of your camera. The next thing is, the other thing is, if you don't have the manual, you can get it on the website. And I know you've got a Canon, because I can tell by the way you describe these modes. So go to the Canon website and download the PDF of your camera's manual. The other thing is YouTube. YouTube videos explain this stuff, but I'll explain it too. AV mode on Canons, or A mode on Nikons, and I believe it's A mode on the Olympus, yes, is aperture priority mode. That controls the depth of field of your camera. TV mode on your Canon is S mode on the Olympus and S mode on the Nikon. That's shutter priority, so it controls the shutter speed of your camera. P mode is called program mode, where you control the shutter and the aperture priority, the shutter speed and the aperture priority, but only one at a time. What I mean by that is when you're in P mode, you can switch your shutter speed and the camera will figure out the correct ISO and aperture. Or you can switch your aperture and the camera will figure out the best shutter speed. And then finally, M mode is common on all the cameras. That's manual mode. That means you have control over everything. Aperture and exposure and shutter and ISO and everything. That's the tough mode. But definitely do a YouTube search for your particular kind of camera, and you'll get some more information about that kind of stuff. I love traveling. Want to buy a DSLR camera? Any suggestions from someone in San Francisco? No name. See, it's not one of the problems with these kinds of questions is that without knowing more about you, it's tough to help you. If weight is a concern, look at buying a mirrorless camera, whether that be the Olympus, whether that be the Fuji or a Sony. They make the three best mirrorless cameras if weight is an issue. The problem is when you start adding lenses like this big one, this is the 75 300 millimeter lens, this gets kind of heavy. This is no longer light. So it depends on what kind of shooter you are. If you are, this is the 9 to 18 lens. So you can imagine this lens on this camera makes it a lot lighter. So the mirrorless camera bodies are quite light, are quite small and quite light. What kind of shooting do you want to do? What kind of photography do you like to do? The reason I ask that is that one of the problems that you have when people travel is you don't want to carry around a bunch of lenses with you. You don't want to be somewhere where you have to constantly switch lenses out because you need a wide-angle lens, and then 10 seconds later you need a zoom lens. Send me an email if you hear this. Send me another email and give me more information about what kind of photographer you are, what kind of photography you want to do, even where you go. You know, for example, if you're going someplace that's got a lot of landscape that you're going to shoot, then you're going to want a camera that has one of these wide-angle lenses. If you're going someplace that's got a lot of up-close things, you might want to look at getting a zoom lens. You know, if you're going to the Vatican, and you're going to St. Paul's Basilica, this lens might not be as good as this big zoom lens because you want to zoom in on the details on the statues and on the paintings and on the frescoes. So it depends on where you're traveling and what's important to you. So send me some more information with a bit more detail. Wayne says, this is like asking what the best type of restaurant is without giving any details on the sort of food you like, your allergies. Exactly. I'm going to be a little more specific and help me out. Generally, though, as MacMan says, if I was going, I'd have two bodies, one with a wide-angle lens and one with a long lens. Yeah, you can do that. It depends on the kind of camera you have and the kind of lens you're going to get. So, for example, when I go to Portugal, I'm going to rent a very, very high-quality Nikon lens. It's got me, say, a 70 or 200 zoom on it, so I can get a lot of that range. I only want to have one lens when I'm walking around. I don't want to have to carry around or swap out lenses. I want one good lens that'll get me most of the shots I want. As I say that, I know I'm going to want at least one wide-angle lens too, but I will specify the days I shoot. So one day will be a wide-angle shooting day. Then another day will be a zoom lens shooting day. Now, if I had an assistant, I'd get two bodies, lenses on either one. That's the way to go. Get an assistant. Anybody want to be my assistant in Portugal? Anybody want to be my handler? The reason why I'm asking is because I just got from the nice folks at Finisterra, which is the name of the tour company, just got some incredible images and some more specifics on the trip to Portugal. Take a look at some of these. This is the lobby of one of the hotels that we're going to be staying in Lisbon. It is going to be May 5th. So it'll be Arrival Day in Lisbon on May 5th. Oh, ArcSign says, Shawn, do photography books that focus on using specific cameras still exist? Oh, they do, ArcSign. Yeah, you can buy a book on pretty much any of the common or popular cameras. I've got one for the Nikon D600. I know there's all kinds of specific ones to the Canons. You can get specific books on specific cameras all over the place. So May 5th is going to be Arrival Day, so you can arrive earlier if you'd like. It's going to be 10 days in Lisbon, four nights in Lisbon at this gorgeous hotel in Lisbon. That bathroom's better than one at my house. This is I got pictures of the hotel, the hotel in Porto where we're going to spend 2 nights. Check this out. This hotel is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. There's the lobby of the hotel. And even better, I gotta show you this one. Where's the picture? Look at this room. That's my room. This room, I'm staying here. Come back. So we'll spend 4 nights in Lisbon, 4 nights in Lisbon, 2 nights in Porto, 2 nights in Sintra, I think it is, and then 1 more night in Lisbon, and then travel all the way around there. That castle I've been showing you guys is in Sintra. I'm meeting with the folks tomorrow to get more details, and we will hopefully on next week's show I'll be able to announce an official website and pricing and all that kind of stuff. But we're working on details now. It looks like it's going to happen. So put it on your calendars, May 5th. That's, let's say, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. So little less than 10 months. So you have lots of time to save up. Start saving your pennies now and join me in. And the other thing is, you got to come because look at this. This is the oh, come on. Let me open this thing up for you guys. This is the hotel bar in Lisbon. Oh, come on. Stupid thing. Where'd it go? This picture is of the hotel bar in Lisbon where we're going to be staying on my birthday. So on my birthday, that's where I'm going to be, and I'm buying because beers are like $1.50 in Portugal. Apparently, food is really cheap in Portugal. Food and drink is really cheap in Portugal. So yeah, so join me on my birthday. And I'll buy you beverages at the bar of the hotel in Lisbon. May 5th, 2017. Really looking forward to that. Lesh, birthday trip. Yep. MacMan, May 5th to 15th. Exactly. Folks, that's it. I want to say thanks very much, as always, to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Thanks to you guys. As always, send emails on air at yourmaclifeshow.com anytime during the week or during the show if you want to talk about what we've talked about or have something to bring up. I'm always happy to get emails from you guys. If you get a chance, subscribe to the show. I got to pay for a new camera. I got to pay to fix my old camera. Damn, that hurts. Take care of your gear, kids. Take care of your gear. Because when you break it, it costs a fortune. You go to the website at yourmaclifeshow.com. On the left-hand side, subscribe for $2, $5, $10, $15. As people keep reminding me to remind you, this is my job. This is how I get paid. This is how I make money, is from you guys subscribing to the show. So if you want to support the show and support me, that's the best way to do it. Subscribe to the show. Until next week, as always, thank you guys very much for being here. I appreciate it. And thanks to the listeners, both on the archive and on the live show. You folks in the IRC chat room are always fantastic. I appreciate you guys the mostest. Thanks very much, folks. Until next week, as always, I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!